The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Tonight on Politics Now, feeding the hungry, the state's efforts to help Nevadans without food benefits during the government shutdown. Plus, preparing for a special session. We speak with State Senator Julie Pazina about what to expect and her re-election bid. And a councilwoman indicted. New twist in the long-running feud on Henderson's city council.
You're watching Politics Now with John Langler on 8 News Now.
Thank you for joining us. Tonight, the federal government is still shut down, and new this week, it started impacting commercial flights. But for those on food stamps, well, the impact is nothing new. This week, about 200,000 Nevadans got some of their SNAP benefits. About 300,000 others still need a place to get food. 8 News Now reporter Joshua Pagero looks at how food banks are struggling to meet the need.
With nearly 500,000 Nevadans relying on SNAP benefits, those recipients are now lining up at food banks and distribution centers for food. There were cars and people lining up at the Just One project waiting for a chance to get enough food to get them through the week. Brooke Neubauer runs the nonprofit.
One thing that I learned very early on in my career in fighting food insecurity is that hunger has no face.
Neubauer says her organization on a regular day sees 200 people, but it's currently at 700.
We're just really grateful that we are able to step in at this time of crisis for so many Southern Nevadans that don't know where their next meal is coming from.
Democratic Congresswoman Susie Lee, talking to volunteers at the Just One project, reacted to the Trump administration releasing almost $5 billion to fund SNAP for 2 weeks.
I just want you to see the human toil that this cruel decision has on these people who, one, they have to work, they got to get their kids to school, they might have sick parents at home, and now they're waiting in food lines.
Republican Governor Joe Lombardo was touring 3 Square Food Bank Monday morning. He says he has lobbied Congress on behalf of Nevada.
We need the Democratic senators to make the decision to reopen the governor.
Governor Lombardo last week approved almost $40 million in funding to go to food banks. Nevada normally gets $90 million a month from the federal government for SNAP. Lombardo has activated the National Guard for 2 weeks to help distribute food. They are working to get 25 emergency distribution centers open to feed people.
Feeding people and ensure that they have a good quality of life for them and their families. I think that rises to the most important piece of what we're dealing with.
Officials at the Just One project and at 3 Square say no amount of donations can supplement federal aid. Reporting near Bonanza and Decatur, Josh Pagero, 8 News Now.
Meanwhile, as I mentioned, thousands of flights have been canceled this weekend. The FAA is cutting air traffic as it deals with a shortage of air traffic controllers. They haven't been paid since the government shutdown started. The cutbacks affect 40 major airports across the country, including Reed International Airport. 4% of its journeys were canceled Friday. FAA officials say that number could go up to 10% next week. Reed is the 7th busiest airport in the country. The Nevada State Assembly has 2 new members. This week it filled positions left open by resignations. Clark County Commissioners appointed Republican Jason Patchett to a seat left open by Toby Urick. He resigned. Patchett works in the Civil District Attorney's Office. He also recently pushed for tougher traffic laws after his son Rex was killed by a speeding driver in Henderson. Rex's law increased maximum penalties for speeding drivers in deadly crashes.
I am deeply honored by this appointment and the trust that goes with it. I, at the same time, recognize that I've not been appointed to be honored, but I've been appointed to serve.
Patchett will serve the rest of Urick's 2-year term. In northern Nevada, Douglas and Lyon County Commissioners filled another empty seat. Republican Blaine Osborne also appointed to the state assembly. Osborne's the head of the Nevada Rural Hospital Partners. He replaces Ken Gray. So with the state legislature now at full capacity, a special session is imminent. Several lawmakers have told 8 News Now they expect Governor Joe Lombardo to call a session for next Thursday. As of this recording, nothing official has come from the governor's office yet. But a lot of things could be on the agenda. That includes shutdown-related issues, the food stamp issues, health care, the governor's crime bill, and potentially expanding film tax credits. But the governor actually will set the agenda. This week, opponents of the film tax credit expansion effort tried to raise their concerns. They compared it to Georgia's film tax credit bill. Critics, like them, they call it a handout to the wealthy that doesn't benefit the state. Progressive groups and Republican State Senate Minority Leader Robin Titus joined Georgia Democrat Marvin Lim on this Zoom call.
The film tax credit, which here in Georgia started in 2005, has brought a lot of benefits to the state of Georgia. Now, my point is that it has come at a significant price, that it is not sustainable, that this industry, I'm a Democrat, that this industry cares more about money than arts communities, progressive values, those things.
Nevada Jobs Now is backing the film tax credit expansion, and it's supported by local labor unions. Backers say Nevada's bill includes benefits that were not included in Georgia, which includes a $400 million initial infrastructure investment, $300 million in annual production requirements, and the bill requires half of the studio's workforce has to come from the Valley. Supporters believe it would help stimulate the economy. Democratic State Senator Julie Pazina is getting ready for that eventual special session, and she's also recently started a re-election campaign. Her district covers the southern portion of Clark County, Silverado Ranch, and so forth. She also chairs the Natural Resources Committee and the Tourism Caucus. We discussed this week what lawmakers could face in Carson City. There have been efforts already at the state level to address this, and in interim finance committee, whether from the governor himself mentioning it, what was it, $35 million? I think it was some amount of money to try and put something towards food banks and so forth. I think Speaker Yeager suggested declaring a fiscal emergency. What do you think might be a path forward that would really help people in need? There's a lot of moving parts, I realize.
There are a lot of moving parts. I mean, ideally, the federal government from, President Trump will start negotiating along with our leaders on both sides of the aisle in Washington, and the government will reopen. And then SNAP benefits will be paid. Hardworking Nevadans who have been doing their jobs this whole 39 days now maybe without getting paid will begin receiving their paychecks and their back pay. So obviously the hope is that the government reopens. I mean, for everyone, that's the hope. But what we can do, at least on a state level, is look at trying to pay out what SNAP benefits we can, trying to feed Nevadans right now in the interim, and of course only while the government is closed and not paying for SNAP.
You mentioned other items that could be discussed at the special session and some of the things that got lost in the shuffle in the regular session. There was a lot of things that we kind of just got lost in the shuffle. I think the crime bill, right, was kind of lost. The film tax credit measure, that was a whole nother brouhaha. Is it going to be hard to talk about some of these measures, especially film tax credits, hypothetically, when you're at the same time trying to fulfill food stamps and other sort of core things that people need to survive, or at the same time you're talking about maybe building film studios?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There are a lot of things, as you mentioned the crime bill, and I know that there are a lot of resorts on the Strip. I should say that I chair the Tourism Caucus. There are a lot of resorts on the Strip who were really concerned about Strip safety. So I think, the crime bill is definitely one of those bills that's going to be brought up. I think the governor had pieces of his healthcare legislation that he'll probably be interested in pursuing. And you mentioned the film bill. So all of this is really in the governor's hands right now because he will set the agenda. So I think right now, a lot of us are anxiously awaiting what will be on that agenda to see what happens.
Why do you want to run for re-election? Obviously, you're still very active right now, having to go potentially to a special session. But what are some of your goals if you're re-elected down the line for your district? What is needed? Yeah,
so this is probably my favorite question. So I love policy. I love speaking to my neighbors and finding out how we can improve lives in the district and how we can make things better. So I should say I started knocking doors and speaking to my neighbors when I was 11 years old. That's when I first started knocking on doors. So I've been doing that not just for myself, but for other candidates throughout the state long before I was elected. But speaking to my neighbors, one of the things I hear most frequently is, accessible and affordable health care. It's something that comes up more often than I wish it did here in Nevada. I have spoken to people who've been concerned that a partner, that a child, that a parent, that they themselves just can't even get into a doctor. You know, affordability aside, they just can't even get an appointment and they're waiting months and worried how much worse a condition can worsen in the time it takes to get into a doctor. So healthcare has been very important to me. One of the first things I decided to tackle when I got elected was graduate medical education. We're graduating more doctors with UNLV having come online, with Roseman now looking to graduate doctors. We have UNR, we have Toro. We're very fortunate to be graduating doctors in the state, but they don't have the residency slots or the fellowships to continue to practice here. So they leave the state and then they don't come back because they've set down roots. So one of the things I've been working on wholeheartedly is trying to figure out how we can keep those graduate medical slots here in the state so that then the doctors stay and they don't leave.
So far, Senator Pazina does not have an opponent for her District 12 seat. You can see that full interview, by the way, at 8newsnow.com. It's been about 3 months now since that cyber attack which crippled Nevada's computer system. Well, now state officials are revealing some more details on what happened and how it was handled. A state report released this week shows hackers actually got into the government system in May. The governor added Nevada did not pay a ransom. Instead, it spent about $1.3 million on vendor support. Hackers did get access to more than 26,000 files. 90% of that data, according to the state, was recovered. This week, Nevada Democrats said they are not convinced by the Trump administration's explanation of that nuclear testing talk. Senator Jackie Rosen responded to some new comments by Energy Secretary Chris Wright over explosive weapons testing.
While Energy Secretary Chris Wright has attempted to clarify Trump's comments, saying resuming nuclear testing does not include explosive testing, we need the president himself to make that clarification. And until then, we're going to have to take him at his word.
Last week, we reported that President Donald Trump was interested in restarting Nevada's nuclear weapons testing program, potentially explosive testing. Energy Secretary Chris Wright later said the president meant subcritical, non-explosive testing that is already being done right now at Nevada's national security site. The U.S. abandoned explosive nuclear weapons testing in 1992. Next on Politics Now, under indictment, a bitter feud on the Henderson City Council leads to charges. Plus, banning pet sales, some new rules for shops around Las Vegas.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
This week, the Las Vegas City Council passed a new ordinance around pet shops. They can no longer sell several different kinds of animals. The measure prevents new stores from selling dogs, cats, rabbits, guinea pigs, or pot-bellied pigs. Existing pet shops are not affected by this until 2028. In the meantime, they do have to follow a new set of safety regulations. Advocates call this a huge win for the animal rescue community, but critics worry about the business impact.
It's all about stopping the flow of breeding because there's too many pets in this community than there are people and homes. So we're, again, just so excited and so proud of the City Council to make the right decision.
We think the last thing that the City Council should be doing is dictating what businesses can and cannot exist. We also believe that there is a better way to really address the concerns that we heard. And we want the same thing as everyone. We want animals to be taken care of.
The city of Las Vegas says 13 pet stores are going to be affected by this ban. Clark County, North Las Vegas, and Henderson have similar bans already in place. This week, the bubbling tension on Henderson's city council popped up in an unexpected place, a Clark County grand jury indictment. Councilwoman Carrie Cox is now accused of recording a private conversation involving a fellow council member. 8 News Now reporter James Schaefer has that story.
This appears to stem from a January 9th incident inside Henderson City Hall during a retirement party for then City Manager Richard Derrick, which suddenly a council member allegedly started recording a private conversation while behind a curtain.
You will not silence me. You weren't silent.
There has been tension at Henderson City Hall before between Councilman Carrie Cox and other members, namely Councilwoman Monica Larson.
Thank you, Carrie. You've had your turn. Thank you, Carrie. You've had your turn.
I'm going to call a recess.
This week's indictment and incident, another chapter between two council members at odds, Carrie Cox and Monica Larson. Documents show back on January 9th, Larson accused Cox of hiding behind a curtain while recording her conversation with a community business leader, who in a witness statement corroborated the incident. Upon confronting her, Larson wrote there was a disagreement, and Cox left. 9 months later, Cox was charged on the count of monitoring or attempting to monitor a private conversation matching the January 9th date. The charge, a Category D felony, which can carry prison time for 1 to 4 years and a fine. The city of Henderson, Larson, and Cox all declined to comment directly on the indictment and the incident. Now, the rest of the council has long been at odds with Councilwoman Cox at meetings, including the mayor, who sent her a cease and desist regarding, quote, spurious rumors of an affair. We should mention Cox disputes that claim. We should also note Cox is currently running for re-election. Her opponent, Annette Dawson-Owens' campaign simply said she is focused on running her campaign. Reporting from the newsroom, James Schaefer, 8 News Now.
You can read the indictment yourself and previous stories on the goings-on at Henderson City Hall over at 8newsnow.com. This week, another name jumped into the race for Clark County Commission. Former Nevada State Senator and Gaming Control Board Chair Becky Harris announced her candidacy. She's running as a nonpartisan for District F. Harris was a Republican in the legislature. Democrat Justin Jones currently holds that District F seat, but he is not running for re-election. Also already running for the seat in District F, Assemblywoman Heidi Kasama, businessman Albert Mack, and small business owner Joseph Chirafi. They're all running as Republicans. This week, UNLV adjunct professor Minja Yan announced that she is running. She is the only Democrat in this race. Next here on Politics Now, debating tariffs. President Donald Trump's trade policy goes to the Supreme Court and faces tough questions. Plus, sparring in the Senate. Accusations by Nevada's Jackie Rosen against a Republican colleague.
You're watching Politics Now.
Well, on the surface, it was a routine Senate committee hearing. Then Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen and Ohio Republican Bernie Moreno changed that. Senator Rosen accused Senator Moreno's team of stalking her staff. At this hearing, Senator Moreno said he wrote down the VIN numbers of Democratic senators and their staffers' cars. He claimed he was trying to prove their vehicles did not have adequate safety features. And that sparked this reaction from Senator Rosen.
I object to you stalking my car and my staff to find the VIN numbers to present to this committee. What are you doing there? What are you going to do with them? It's an invasion of our privacy. If you came and asked me for my VIN, I will tell you what I have in my car. You watched me go to see who drives me, writing down their VIN number so you could find out what they have. That seems a little creepy.
Senator Moreno defended his actions. He says he only used information that is already available to the general public. The fate of President Donald Trump's controversial tariffs are now in the hands of the Supreme Court. Wednesday, protesters rallied outside the court against the White House's sweeping trade policy, but inside, the Trump administration defended them. It argues tariffs are not a tax, but a regulation within the president's emergency powers. Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito appeared open to that argument, but others pushed back.
We don't contend that what's being exercised here is the power to tax. It's the power to regulate foreign commerce. These are regulatory tariffs. They are not revenue-raising tariffs.
And you want to say tariffs are not taxes, but that's exactly what they are. They're generating money from American citizens.
The White House says it plans to use tariff revenue to pay down the federal deficit. It also wants to offset profit losses for impacted farmers. This week, we saw some new national polling from 8 News Now and Emerson College, and it shows President Donald Trump's approval rating is dropping. Right now, it sits, as you see there, at 41%, 4 points lower than October's poll. It's also 8 points behind his disapproval rating. Once again, the poll shows the economy is still the most important issue for voters. It's very or somewhat important to 95% of them. Looking ahead to the 2028 presidential race, this poll shows Democrats favor California Governor Gavin Newsom, with about a quarter of Democrats saying that. Former Vice President Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg trail in second and third place. On the Republican side, Vice President J.D. Vance is the overwhelming favorite, with more than half of Republicans saying he's their choice. More than 8% of those polled want a third Trump term, even though that's banned by the 22nd Amendment. You can see more of this exclusive Emerson College polling on Political Power Ranker, Fridays at 1:30 on our 8 News Now streaming channel, and you can download that on most smart TVs. Last weekend, members of the Republican Jewish Coalition met here in Las Vegas. They celebrated the election of President Donald Trump and the recent release of Israeli hostages. On stage, members of the Trump administration tried to discourage a recent surge, they say, in anti-Semitism, even among the Republican Party. Conservative political commentator Scott Jennings addressed the concerns over that behavior.
We are on the front lines of a fight that will determine whether our children and grandchildren will grow up in a world where the values of Western civilization persevere, or whether they will grow up in a world shrouded in darkness under ideologies and belief systems that are the very enemies of human liberty.
Other speakers included House Majority Leader Mike Johnson and Senator Ted Cruz. President Donald Trump appeared on video. Next on Politics Now, representing the Silver State, the National Christmas Tree stops in Las Vegas on its journey to D.C.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
This week, the National Christmas Tree made a stop in Las Vegas. It was shown off at the Las Vegas Civic Center downtown Tuesday. The tree's a 53-foot tall red fir. It's named Silver Bell. It comes from up north in northern Nevada, the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest. And now it's on its way to the nation's capital, the first National Christmas Tree from Nevada. On Tuesday, the annual Veterans Day Parade returns to downtown Las Vegas. The parade route starts at 4th and Garces. It heads north and ends on Stewart. Organizers say it's the largest Veterans Day parade west of the Mississippi. Celebrations start at 10 a.m. That'll do it for us this week here on Politics Now. For the latest, go to 8newsnow.com. We're back with you right here next week. Take care.